dangerous, insane, sadistic.
When you're up to your knees, you'll kiss my ass to kill you.
These are just a few words to describe the enemies of the world's most famous spy, James Bond. Welcome to Villains, a series that uncovers the why behind the criminal masterminds of the 007 franchise. To help us better understand what will push someone to the edge, having them risk it all for reputation, wealth, and power. And at the end, I'm going to give them an octopus rating on a scale from 1 to 10 on how good they are at being bad. And at the end of the series, I'm going to do a side-by-side video comparison showing the rankings of villains as well as my rankings of all of the Bond films. We're going to take a look and see how a good villain can impact a film, taking it from good to great. Welcome back to the Bond Report. My name is Chris, the Beard of Blofeld. So in this series, we're going to be covering all 25 Eon production films, as well as the literary contributions from author-creator Ian Fleming. And while Dr. No may be the first official Eon Productions James Bond movie, it is the 6th novelization of 007. Dr. Julius No is our main protagonist. More commonly depicted and played by actor Joseph Wiseman, he's most notably known for having mechanical hands and a private island with a fire-breathing dragon tank. Got to get me one of those. Anyway, before he was Dr. Julius No, he was just No. Abandoned by his parents, a German missionary, and a Chinese girl, he was raised by his aunt. Because of that, he would grow up around and eventually join the Chinese crime syndicate known as the Tongs. This is where it gets good. The Tongs are a criminal organization founded in China after the fall of the Ming Dynasty. The Tongs' initial goal was to overthrow the current regime and restore the Ming Dynasty to power. They would eventually spread across the globe and are predominantly made up of Chinese immigrants. The Tongs were founded in America in 1876 on the West Coast in San Francisco, California. They have well-established organizations in Canada, Australia, as well as the UK. The word Tong means hall or gathering place. First 4 families in California set up 2 hotels that would grow into a 12-city block Chinatown of power and crime. These hotels were used as a meeting place for their secret society and gambling events. See, in China, gambling is actually considered a very social act. It's not illegal, and it's even welcomed at family functions. So it's a very common social activity, similar to like maybe just playing cards, playing board games here in America. However, in China, they like to gamble. Leveraging this in the US, they would lean heavily into high-stakes betting, along with prostitution. These 2 things were their bread and butter, and for the Tongs, it was business as usual. Business operated right out in the open. And back in the 90s, most American Chinatowns had the Tong halls clearly marked. Whether it was in New York, West Coast, East Coast, it didn't matter. Back in the 90s, they had that kind of power. They just didn't care. These are very dangerous people, and they saw a lot of potential in No. So he was eventually smuggled into their New York office, where he would eventually work his way up the ranks to become their American treasurer. However, as with most villains, greed got the better of No, and he would end up embezzling 1 million in gold bars after the Tongs were pulled into a New York mob war that erupted in 1920. He was eventually caught by the Tongs, and his punishment was brutal. And this is where you gotta respect the man. They tortured this man incessantly, and he never gave up the location of the gold. This ultimately led to them chopping off both of his hands, and they shot him right through the heart. hold on. Not exactly. Some of you may know that Dr. No actually had a medical condition known as dextrocardia, which means his heart was not on the left side of his body, but instead it was on the right side of his body. We will see this hinted at another villain later on down the line in the series. Some of you may know it, but we'll get to that later. Now, because he was left for dead, shot through the chest, bleeding out of his wrists, I mean, he's having a really bad day.
Severely wounded but not dead, No would spend the next handful of months in the hospital. This experience would inspire him to enroll in medical school far away from his California life as he landed in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, looking at the timeline provided by Fleming and the history, we can safely assume that No attended the Marquette University School of Medicine, MUSM, sometime in the 1920s. Known today as the Medical College of Wisconsin, at the time a medical degree only required 4 years of schooling.
This would be a huge turning point for No, as he would now adopt the title of doctor, and at this point changed his name to Dr. Julius No, symbolic of the rejection of his German missionary father, Julius. So at this point in his life, he has a deep understanding of money, one of the largest criminal organizations in the world, and is now an accredited medical doctor. This man is highly intelligent, psychologically damaged, and motivated by money and revenge. Given his lack of hands, Dr. No actually wore 2 different types of prosthetics. Now, Fleming goes on to describe his metal hands as being more simple, kind of like pincers, where they kind of, almost like crab claws, but I'll show a picture here. And they're very pointed and sharp. I'm sure there's not a lot of articulation or accuracy. Fleming will go on to describe his second pair of hands as more of a waxen material, which has a bit of a transparency to it. So these are going to look more natural, but he has even less control and dexterity with them. His overall physical appearance is already tall, and then he actually wears a special boot to make him even taller, putting him around 6'6". He also has a yellowish tint to his skin. Now, in the film, they tried to do the best they could. Wiseman was chosen partially because he kind of favors him already. He's got that elongated, thin look, and I think that was a great casting. The way Fleming described Dr. No, it was a little more monster-esque, kind of on the cusp of like Nosferatu. Wiseman was very threatening, he was very calm, and he gave us a real sense of danger when he was in the room. And that's where the real danger of a threat comes into play. It's in that calm before the storm. Now, obviously, while filming, they had to use a completely different set of mechanical hands because, well, Joseph Wiseman had hands. So it's kind of hard to work around that, given the time this was filmed. But the hands they used, I thought they worked very well. They got the point across that these were not his real hands. Wiseman even was very keen about how he held his hands to make them look almost uncomfortable and more robotic. Now, in the book, Dr. No even went as far as to wear the first pair of contact lenses to change the color of his eyes. So he's got prosthetic hands, he's made himself taller, he's very slender, and he's changed the color of his eyes. He's doing all of this because he is in hiding from the Tongs still. They think that they've killed him, but all it's going to take is one member of that organization to see him out and alive, and they're going to come after him again. Using the $1 million in gold that he stole from the Tongs, Dr. No needed to preserve that money, so he ended up purchasing a bunch of rare stamps with it. That way he could use the money that he made off of the stamps to go ahead and purchase Crab Key Island and lay low. This all comes into play here. This is a culmination of how he's basically going into hiding and rebuilding. And when he rebuilt, he actually bought a bat guano company that was kind of going out of business. He hired Jamaican and Cuban workers to help get the guano business started, However, part of the contract that they had to sign was once they were on the island, that was it. You can't leave the island. Enter the fire-breathing dragon tank. This was actually built to secure the island from anyone trying to escape or anyone trying to get on the island. And this is how we all believe that Honey Rider's father lost his life. I love the dragon tank. I think it's so much fun. With aid from the Soviets, Dr. No would go on to sabotage American missiles by jamming their signals and making them land or explode on different targets than planned. He also recovers unexploded missiles from the ocean and turns them over to the Russians. Ironically, Dr. No would admit that there is more going on than just the East versus West rivalry between the USSR and the United States, basically trying to get the Cold War to kick off again. And this brings us up to where we meet Dr. No in the film, where he's having dinner with James Bond and trying to recruit him for Spectre.
Unfortunately, I misjudged you. You are just a stupid policeman.
So now this poses the question, what score does Dr. No get? I mean, this man went through the ringer, growing up without his parents, into crime, theft, major injuries, surgery, and physical deformity, which is actually not uncommon for an author or a writer to give the villain because it symbolizes their struggle in life. But really understanding what Dr. No went through makes it a bit darker. He had a lot to overcome, but turning it all around, getting a medical degree, and then going on to join an even larger criminal organization. He gets tied up in politics. He tries to respark the Cold War. His backstory really kind of reads as like the ultimate somebody telling him he can't do it and him looking at him going, watch me. And he's the first one out of the gate. He's well-rounded, he's threatening, and he's genuinely menacing, which that's terrifying. You've got to admit, he checks a lot of boxes on the villain scale. But after careful consideration, I've decided to give Dr. Julius Snow a 9 out of 10 Spectre Octopi. Yes, I can't help it. While this movie may not rank extremely high in my rankings, and we'll get to that later, Dr. No as a villain does. Everything about him says, I'm going to succeed and be better than you, or I'm going to die trying. Let me know down in the comments. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say, and let's talk about it. And if you would like to support the channel, please consider shopping my merch store. I've just launched a brand new item this week. It is the Yolt Tigers Ninja Academy training gear. Yes, inspired by You Only Live Twice and Tiger Tanaka, I went through and tried to come up with what I thought would be a wonderful modern ninja look. And we've even got the hooded shirt directly from Yolt that looks just like when the ninjas drop down from the volcano lair. So check those out. I've currently got the Killbon Meow shirt, which is going great. Baja has been a big seller. I've got the Spectre Island Pyrotechnics instructor, all designed by me, the Bearded Blofeld. So if you'd like to support the channel, we definitely appreciate the link for that down in the description. Thanks so much for watching. And as always, Merry Christmas, 007.